What happens when a young woman's love for a senior defies all expectations? What happens when a room full of America's elite, gathered for a noble cause, witnesses a moment that leaves them utterly speechless? And what happens when a single question, meant to humiliate, turns into a life lesson for everyone present, especially for the seniors watching tonight? You're about to hear an incredible account of courage, respect, and the power of love that knows no age. This is the moment Karoline Leavitt, the 27-year-old press secretary of the United States, faced a challenge at a charity gala that would change the way everyone in the room saw her and themselves. It was a crisp evening in Chicago, Illinois, where the city's elite had gathered at the prestigious Drake Hotel for a charity gala supporting Alzheimer's research. The cause was close to the hearts of many in attendance, especially the seniors who filled the room, their silver hair and elegant attire a testament to lives well lived. They had come to contribute to a cause that mattered deeply to them, knowing the toll that Alzheimer's could take on families. The ballroom buzzed with energy, the clinking of champagne glasses and the hum of conversation, creating an atmosphere of warmth and generosity. Among the attendees was Karoline Leavitt, the youngest press secretary in U.S. history at just 27 years old, a rising star in the political world who had recently made headlines, not just for her sharp mind and eloquent press briefings, but for her personal life. Karoline had married a man 38 years her senior, a 65-year-old businessman named Richard, and their union had sparked whispers and raised eyebrows across political and social circles. Karoline was no stranger to scrutiny. As the press secretary of the United States, she had spent her days fielding tough questions from journalists, defending the administration's policies, and navigating the often brutal world of Washington, D.C. politics with grace and determination. But tonight, she wasn't here to talk about the latest White House agenda or to spar with the press. She was here to support a cause she cared about, standing proudly beside her husband Richard, who had been a pillar of support in her life. Richard, with his kind eyes and gentle demeanor, had a way of making Karoline feel like the only person in the room, even in a crowd of hundreds. The couple had arrived hand in hand, Karoline in a striking magenta blazer that turned heads, and Richard in a classic black tuxedo, his silver hair catching the light as they mingled with the guests. The evening had been going smoothly. The gala's organizers had just finished a heartfelt speech about the importance of funding Alzheimer's research, and the crowd had responded with generous donations. Seniors in the audience, many of whom had lost loved ones to the disease, nodded in agreement, their faces reflecting both sorrow and hope. Karoline and Richard had been seated near the front, their table filled with other prominent figures from Chicago's high society, including a few political allies who had come to support the cause. The couple shared quiet smiles, their hands occasionally brushing as they listened to the speakers. For Karoline, this night was a chance to step away from the political spotlight and simply be a wife, a partner, and a supporter of a cause that mattered to her husband, who had lost his own mother to Alzheimer's years ago. But the tone of the evening shifted when a liberal journalist, known for her provocative questions, approached Karoline during a break in the program. The journalist, a woman named Claire Bennett, had a reputation for stirring controversy, often using her platform to challenge public figures in ways that bordered on personal attacks. Claire had been circling the room all evening, her sharp eyes scanning for a story, and when she spotted Karoline, she saw an opportunity. She approached with a microphone in hand, her cameraman trailing behind her, capturing every moment for her outlet's live broadcast. The crowd around them began to quiet, sensing that something was about to happen. Seniors in the audience leaned forward in their seats, their curiosity piqued by the sudden tension in the air. Claire wasted no time. She thrust the microphone toward Karoline, her voice loud and cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. "Karoline Leavitt," she began, her tone dripping with a mix of curiosity and disdain. "Do you ever regret marrying a senior of 65 years old?" The question landed like a bombshell. The room fell silent, the clinking of glasses and the hum of conversation replaced by a collective intake of breath. All eyes turned to Karoline, who sat with her hands clasped in her lap, her expression calm but her eyes flashing with a quiet intensity. Richard, seated beside her, stiffened, his jaw tightening as he felt the weight of the question directed at his wife. The seniors in the audience exchanged glances, their faces a mix of shock and discomfort. For many of them, The question hit close to home. They had spent their lives building families, careers, and legacies, only to face the subtle and sometimes not so subtle judgments of a society that often dismissed them as too old for certain things, including love. Claire's question wasn't just an attack on Karoline. It was a challenge to the very idea that seniors could still be seen as desirable, as worthy of love and partnership. Some of the older women in the crowd clutched their husbands' hands a little tighter, their hearts racing as they waited to see how Karoline would respond. Karoline took a deep breath, her gaze steady as she looked directly at Claire. She didn't flinch, didn't falter, even as the weight of the room's attention pressed down on her. When she spoke, her voice was clear and strong, carrying the same confidence she brought to the White House press room. "Claire," she began, addressing the journalist by name, "I'm glad you asked that question, because it gives me a chance to say something I've wanted to say for a long time." The crowd leaned in, hanging on her every word. Karoline's tone was measured, but there was a fire in her voice that commanded attention. "I don't regret marrying Richard for a single second," she continued, her eyes softening as she glanced at her husband. "And I'll tell you why. Love isn't about age. It's not about what society thinks you should do or who you should be with. Love is about finding someone who sees you for who you are, who supports you, who challenges you to be better, and who makes you feel like the best version of yourself every single day. Richard does that for me, and I do that for him. That's what matters." The room remained silent, but the energy had shifted. The seniors in the audience, who had initially felt a pang of discomfort at Claire's question, now felt a swell of pride. Karoline's words resonated with them deeply. Many of them had faced their own struggles with societal expectations, whether it was being told they were too old to start a new career, too old to travel the world, or too old to fall in love again after losing a spouse. Karoline's unwavering defense of her marriage to Richard was a powerful reminder that age was just a number, and that love could transcend it. But Karoline wasn't done. She turned her attention back to Claire, her voice growing even more resolute. "You asked if I regret marrying a senior, but let me ask you something, Claire. Have you ever stopped to think about the wisdom, the experience, and the depth that someone like Richard brings to a relationship? Have you ever considered that maybe, just maybe, I'm the lucky one here? Because I am. I'm lucky to be married to a man who has lived a full life, who has seen the world through eyes that have witnessed history, and who has learned lessons that he now shares with me every day." Claire shifted uncomfortably, the microphone still in her hand but her confidence visibly shaken. She hadn't expected this response. She had hoped to catch Karoline off guard, to provoke a reaction that would make for a juicy headline, but instead Karoline was turning the tables, using the moment to deliver a message that was far bigger than Claire's question. Karoline continued, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "Richard has taught me what it means to be patient, to be kind, to be resilient. He's taught me how to navigate challenges with grace, how to stand up for what I believe in, and how to love unconditionally. Those are lessons you can't learn from someone your own age, because they come from a lifetime of experience, and I'm grateful for that every single day." The seniors in the audience were visibly moved. Some of them wiped away tears, their hearts swelling with pride as they listened to Karoline speak. For so long, they had felt marginalized by a culture that often valued youth over experience, that dismissed their contributions and their worth. But here was Karoline Leavitt, the press secretary of the United States, standing up for them, celebrating them, and reminding everyone in the room that seniors had so much to offer, not just to their families, but to the world. Karoline's gaze swept across the room, taking in the faces of the guests, many of whom were seniors themselves. "I know there are people in this room who understand what I'm talking about," she said, her voice softening. "You've lived lives full of love, of loss, of triumph, and of lessons. You've built families, you've built careers, you've built legacies, and you deserve to be celebrated for that. You deserve to be seen, to be heard, and to be loved, whether you're 65, 75, or 95. Age doesn't diminish your worth. If anything, it enhances it." The crowd erupted into applause, the sound filling the ballroom with a warmth that hadn't been there before. Seniors in the audience clapped the loudest, their faces beaming with pride and gratitude. They felt seen, they felt valued, and they felt understood. Karoline's words had struck a chord, reminding them that their age was not a limitation, but a strength. But Karoline had one final message, and it was directed at Claire. She turned back to the journalist, her eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that made Claire take a step back. "Claire," she said, her voice firm but not unkind, "I hope you take something away from this tonight. I hope you learn that love isn't something you can judge from the outside. It's not something you can reduce to a number or a headline or a soundbite. Love is personal, it's sacred, and it's powerful. And if you ever find yourself in a position to love someone the way I love Richard, I hope you'll embrace it with your whole heart, no matter what anyone else thinks." The room fell silent again, but this time it was a different kind of silence filled with awe and respect. Claire lowered her microphone, her face flushed with a mix of embarrassment and realization. She had come here to humiliate Karoline, to make her squirm under the weight of a provocative question. But instead, Karoline had turned the moment into a masterclass on love, respect, and the value of seniors. The cameraman behind Claire stopped recording, sensing that there was nothing more to capture. The story Claire had hoped to tell had been rewritten by Karoline's response. The applause started again, this time even louder than before. The seniors in the audience were on their feet, clapping with a vigor that belied their age. They weren't just clapping for Karoline, they were clapping for themselves, for the validation of their worth, for the reminder that they still had so much to give. Karoline smiled, her eyes shining with emotion as she reached for Richard's hand. He squeezed it tightly, his own eyes filled with pride and love for the woman he had married. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations and heartfelt conversations. Guests approached Karoline and Richard, many of them seniors who wanted to share their own stories of love and resilience. One woman, a 72-year-old widow who had recently started dating again, told Karoline that her words had given her the courage to ignore the judgment of her children and pursue her new relationship. Another man, an 80-year-old retired doctor, thanked Karoline for reminding him that his age didn't define his ability to make a difference in the world. As the night drew to a close, Karoline and Richard stood together near the edge of the ballroom, watching as the guests began to leave. The energy in the room was different now, lighter, more hopeful, more connected. Karoline had come to the gala to support a cause she cared about, but she had left with something far greater: the respect and admiration of everyone in the room, and a renewed sense of purpose in her own life. Claire, meanwhile, had slipped out quietly, her cameraman in tow. She didn't speak to Karoline again that night, but those who knew her could see that she was different. The sharpness in her eyes had softened, replaced by a thoughtful expression that suggested she was reevaluating her approach. Karoline's words had left an impact, not just on the seniors in the room, but on Claire herself. She had come to the gala looking for a story, and she had found one, just not the one she had expected. For the seniors watching tonight, Karoline Leavitt's response at that Chicago Gala was more than just a moment of triumph. It was a reminder of their own worth, their own value, and their own capacity for love. It was a call to embrace life fully, no matter their age, and to never let society's expectations dictate their happiness. And for Karoline, it was a chance to show the world that love, true, unconditional love, knows no boundaries, no limits, and no age. So, to all the seniors out there, let Karoline's words be a lesson for you too. You are not defined by your age. You are defined by the love you give, the wisdom you share, and the lives you touch. And if a 27-year-old press secretary can stand up for that truth in a room full of elites, then you can stand up for it in your own life every single day.